The white silk pooled around another woman's feet, and Zoe felt her heart stop. Her wedding dress, the one she had saved for 18 months to buy, the one she had dreamed about since she was 12 years old, was walking down the aisle of St. Mary's Cathedral, worn by a complete stranger. "This can't be happening," Zoe whispered, pressing her face against the chapel window. The bride inside looked radiant, glowing with happiness as she approached her groom. The dress fit her perfectly, as if it had been made for her instead of Zoe. "Miss, are you okay?" The wedding planner's assistant touched Zoe's shoulder gently. "You look pale." Zoe turned away from the window, her own wedding dress hanging limply in her arms. The dress she now held was beautiful, but it wasn't hers. It was 2 sizes too big, the wrong shade of white, and completely different from what she had ordered. Today was supposed to be her wedding day, and she was standing outside a church watching another bride wear her dream dress. "There's been a mistake at the boutique," Zoe said, her voice barely audible. "They mixed up the orders." The assistant's eyes widened. "Oh no. What time is your ceremony?" 2 hours. Zoe looked at her phone. 2 hours and I don't have a dress that fits." Her phone buzzed with messages from her bridesmaids, her mother, her groom-to-be asking where she was. The whole day had started wrong when she went to pick up her dress that morning. The boutique was in chaos, the owner apologizing frantically while explaining that somehow 2 orders had been switched. The other bride had already taken Zoe's dress, and they had no way to contact her. "We're so sorry," the boutique owner had said. "But this dress is also beautiful. Maybe we can alter it quickly?" But there wasn't time for alterations. There wasn't time for anything except the growing panic in Zoe's chest as she realized her perfect day was falling apart. Now, standing outside the cathedral where the other bride was having her ceremony, Zoe felt lost. She had followed the address from the boutique's records, hoping to catch the other bride before her ceremony and explain the situation. But she was too late. "Maybe we can talk to them after the ceremony?" the assistant suggested. Zoe shook her head. "Look how happy she is. I can't ruin her day." She watched as the bride and groom exchanged vows, their joy visible even from outside the building. "Besides, even if I got the dress back now, it would smell like her perfume, have her makeup on it. It wouldn't be mine anymore." The weight of disappointment settled on her shoulders. This wasn't just about a dress, it was about the dream she had built around it. She had imagined walking down the aisle in that specific dress, seeing her fiancé's face when he saw her in it for the first time. She had pictured their children looking at wedding photos someday, asking about the beautiful dress mommy wore. "What am I going to do?" she asked out loud, more to herself than to the assistant. "Well, you still have a dress," the assistant pointed out gently. "And you have a groom who loves you waiting at the altar. Maybe that's what really matters." Zoe wanted to agree, but the dress in her arms felt like a symbol of everything going wrong. If she couldn't get this one thing right, what did that say about her marriage? What did it say about her ability to plan and organize her life? Her phone rang. It was her maid of honor, Jessica. "Zoe, where are you?" "Everyone's here, and Pastor Williams is asking if we need to delay the start time." Zoe looked around the unfamiliar neighborhood. "I'm trying to fix the dress situation." "What dress situation?" "You picked it up this morning, right?" Zoe closed her eyes. She hadn't told anyone about the mix-up yet. She had hoped to solve it quietly, to show up at her own wedding with everything perfect as planned. "There was a problem at the boutique. They gave me the wrong dress." "What do you mean the wrong dress?" "Someone else is wearing my dress right now. I'm standing outside their wedding ceremony watching it happen." The silence on the other end of the phone stretched long enough that Zoe wondered if the call had dropped. "Jessica? I'm here. I'm just processing." "Okay, bring whatever dress you have. We'll make it work. Mom's here, and you know she's a wizard with a sewing machine. We'll pin it, we'll tape it, we'll do whatever it takes." "But it's not the right dress," Zoe said, tears finally starting to fall. "Nothing about today is going right. Hey, listen to me. Remember when we were kids and you used to play bride with your mom's old curtains? You said the most important part wasn't the dress, it was the person waiting for you at the end of the aisle. You still have that person, right? Christopher is still there?" Zoe nodded, even though Jessica couldn't see her. "Yes, he's still there." "Then come home. Come to your wedding. We'll figure out the dress, but don't miss your own ceremony because someone else is wearing your fabric." After hanging up, Zoe took one last look at the cathedral. The ceremony inside was ending, and people were starting to come outside for photos. She could see the bride laughing, her new husband spinning her around. The dress sparkled in the sunlight, and for a moment, Zoe let herself imagine that it was her in there, that her day had gone according to plan. But Jessica was right. The dress was just fabric. The marriage was what mattered. She was about to leave when she noticed a man sitting on the church steps nearby. He was wearing a black suit and holding his head in his hands. Something about his posture, the way his shoulders shook slightly, made her stop. "Are you okay?" she found herself asking. He looked up and she could see that he had been crying. He was probably in his early 30s, with dark hair and kind eyes that looked completely devastated. "I'm supposed to be getting married right now," he said quietly. "But my bride didn't show up." Zoe felt her breath catch. "What?" "She left a note this morning. Said she couldn't go through with it, that she needed to find herself or something like that." He laughed bitterly. 200 guests are sitting in the church down the street, and I have no idea what to tell them." "I'm so sorry," Zoe said, sitting down beside him on the steps. Her own dress problems suddenly seemed small in comparison. "The worst part is my grandmother," he continued. "She's 93 and she's been looking forward to this day for months. She's been sick and the doctors don't think she has much time left. Seeing me get married was the one thing she said she wanted to live for." Zoe felt her heart break for this stranger. "What's your name?" "Ethan," he said. "And you're either an angel or I'm having some kind of breakdown, because what are the chances that someone in a wedding dress would walk by right when I need to talk to someone?" Zoe looked down at the dress in her arms. "I'm Zoe. And I was supposed to be getting married today too, but everything went wrong." "What happened?" She told him about the dress mix-up, about watching another bride wear her dream dress, about how her perfect day had turned into a disaster. As she spoke, she realized that talking to Ethan was making her feel better. There was something comforting about sharing her disappointment with someone who understood heartbreak. "So you have a dress that doesn't fit and I have a wedding with no bride," Ethan said when she finished. "This is like some kind of cosmic joke." They sat in silence for a moment, watching the happy couple from the cathedral pose for photos across the street. "Can I ask you something crazy?" Ethan said suddenly. Zoe turned to look at him. "After today, I think crazy might be exactly what I need. Would you consider helping me? Just for today, just for my grandmother. I can't bear the thought of disappointing her. She's been planning this day in her head for months, talking about finally meeting my wife, about how happy she'll be." "Help you how?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Would you pretend to be my bride? Just for the ceremony, just to make my grandmother happy. I know it sounds insane, but I'm desperate." Zoe stared at him. "You want me to marry you?" "Not really marry me. Just pretend. Just for a few hours, so my grandmother can see me happy before?" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. It was absolutely crazy. Zoe didn't know this man at all. She had her own wedding to get to, her own problems to solve. But something about his story, about the way he talked about his grandmother, made her want to help. "What would happen after?" she asked. "I mean, if I did this crazy thing, how would it end?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "I haven't thought that far ahead. I just know I can't walk into that church and tell my grandmother that her dreams are crushed." Zoe looked at the dress in her arms, then at Ethan's hopeful face. Her own wedding felt like it was already ruined. Maybe helping someone else save their day would give this dress a purpose after all. "If I did this," she said slowly, "I would need something in return. Anything. I need help tracking down my real dress. The boutique has records, addresses, phone numbers. I need someone to help me figure out how to get it back without ruining that other bride's day." Ethan nodded eagerly. "I can do that. I work in event planning. I know how to solve problems like this." Zoe took a deep breath. "Okay, I'll help you. But just for today and just for your grandmother." "Just for today," Ethan agreed. "Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me." As they walked toward Ethan's car, Zoe wondered what she was getting herself into. But for the first time all day, she felt like she was doing something right, something that mattered more than fabric and lace and perfect plans. She just hoped she wouldn't regret it. The drive to Ethan's wedding venue was surreal. Zoe sat in the passenger seat of his car, still holding the wrong wedding dress, trying to process what she had just agreed to do. Ethan drove with the focused intensity of someone trying to solve an impossible problem. "Tell me about your grandmother," Zoe said, breaking the silence. If she was going to do this, she needed to understand who she was doing it for. Ethan's grip on the steering wheel loosened slightly. "Her name is Eleanor. She raised me after my parents died in a car accident when I was 8. She's the strongest person I know, but she's been getting weaker since her heart attack last year. I'm sorry about your parents." "Thank you." "Grandma Eleanor never remarried after my grandfather died, said she had me to take care of and that was enough family for her. She worked 2 jobs to put me through college, never complained once. His voice grew softer. When I told her I was getting married, she cried. Happy tears. She said it was the one thing she needed to see before she could rest. Zoe felt the weight of what she was about to do settle on her shoulders. This wasn't just about helping a stranger anymore, it was about giving an elderly woman peace. What about your bride? Sarah, right? Did you have any warning she might change her mind? Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Her name was Amanda. And honestly, looking back, maybe I should have seen it coming. She'd been distant for weeks, asking weird questions about whether I was sure I wanted to go through with it. I thought it was normal pre-wedding nerves. What did her note say exactly? That she realized she was getting married for the wrong reasons. That she cared about me but wasn't in love with me. That she needed to figure out who she was before she could be anyone's wife. He pulled into the parking lot of St. Mark's Community Church. I can't even be angry with her. She was honest. It just would have been nice if she'd been honest sooner. Zoe looked at the church, which was smaller and more intimate than the cathedral where she'd watched the other bride. Cars filled the parking lot, and she could see people in formal clothes walking toward the entrance. Are you ready for this? Ethan asked. No, Zoe said honestly. But let's do it anyway. They walked into the church together, and Zoe was immediately struck by how different this felt from her own wedding preparations. At her venue, everything had been chaos and stress. Here, despite the circumstances, there was a warmth that made her feel welcome. Ethan. A woman who looked like she might be his aunt rushed over. Where have you been? Everyone's been asking about Amanda. She's getting ready, Ethan said smoothly. Aunt Carol, I'd like you to meet my bride. Zoe extended her hand, hoping her voice wouldn't shake. I'm Zoe. It's nice to meet you. Carol's face lit up. Oh my goodness, you're beautiful. Eleanor is going to be so happy. She's been asking about you all morning. Where is she? Ethan asked. In the front pew. She insisted on getting here early because she didn't want to miss a moment. Carol lowered her voice. She's been talking about this day nonstop. About how she finally gets to meet the woman who stole her grandson's heart. Zoe felt a pang of guilt. She was about to lie to a dying woman who had been nothing but excited about this day. Maybe I should meet her before the ceremony? Zoe suggested. So it's not such a shock when I walk down the aisle? Ethan nodded. Good idea. But we need to be careful about what we say. She's sharp as a tack even at 93. They walked toward the front of the church and Zoe saw her immediately. Eleanor was tiny, probably barely 5 feet tall, with silver hair pinned up in an elegant style. She wore a navy blue dress with a small corsage, and despite her age her eyes were bright and alert. Grandma Eleanor? Ethan said softly. She turned, and her face immediately broke into the biggest smile Zoe had ever seen. Ethan. And this must be. She looked at Zoe with such hope and joy that Zoe felt her throat tighten. This is Zoe, Ethan said. My bride. Eleanor reached out and took Zoe's hands in hers. Her grip was surprisingly strong. Oh my dear, you're even more beautiful than Ethan described. I've been so excited to meet you. It's wonderful to meet you too, Mrs. Zoe realized she didn't know Ethan's last name. Parker, Eleanor said. But you call me Grandma Eleanor. We're family now. The word family hit Zoe harder than she expected. She had always been close to her own grandparents before they passed away, and something about Eleanor's warmth reminded her of her grandmother's hugs. I love your dress, Eleanor continued, looking at the wedding gown in Zoe's arms. It's going to be perfect for the ceremony. Actually, about that, Zoe said carefully. There was a small issue with the final fitting. The dress might not fit exactly right. Eleanor waved her hand dismissively. Oh sweetheart, these things happen. What matters is that you're here, that you're marrying my grandson. He's been so happy since he met you. Zoe glanced at Ethan, who was looking at his grandmother with such love that it made her chest ache. Grandma, are you feeling okay? Do you need anything? Ethan asked. I'm perfect, Eleanor said firmly. This is the best day I've had in months. Years maybe. Seeing you happy, seeing you settled with a good woman, this is all I've ever wanted. The pastor approached them then, a kind-looking man in his 50s. I'm Pastor Rodriguez. Are we ready to begin? Zoe felt panic rise in her throat. This was really happening. She was about to participate in a fake wedding ceremony with a man she'd met an hour ago. Could we have just a few more minutes? Ethan asked. Zoe needs to get changed. Of course. Take your time. Eleanor squeezed Zoe's hand. I'll be right here in the front row, dear. I wouldn't miss this for the world. Ethan led Zoe to a small room behind the altar that was set up as a bridal preparation area. The moment the door closed, Zoe sank into a chair. "I can't do this," she said. "She's so sweet and she's so excited and I'm about to lie to her face." "You're not lying," Ethan said, kneeling beside her chair. "You're giving her a gift. You're giving her peace and happiness on what might be one of her last good days. But what happens afterward? What happens when she wants to see us again, when she wants to be part of our life?" Ethan was quiet for a moment. "I don't know. But I know that if we don't do this, she'll spend however much time she has left disappointed and worried about me. At least this way she'll have this memory." Zoe looked at the dress in her arms. It really was beautiful even if it wasn't hers. The fabric was soft, the beadwork delicate. Someone had put a lot of love into choosing this dress. "Help me into this," she said finally. "But I want to make one thing clear. After today this ends. We figure out a way to explain why your new wife isn't around anymore, and we go back to our regular lives." "Agreed," Ethan said. "Just today." Getting into the dress was more complicated than Zoe had expected. It was too big in the bust and too long in the length, but Ethan proved surprisingly handy with safety pins and creative tucking. When they were done, it didn't look perfect, but it looked like it belonged on a bride. "You look beautiful," Ethan said, and something in his voice made Zoe look at him more carefully. "Amanda would have looked good in this dress, but it suits you better." "Don't," Zoe said quietly. "Don't make this more complicated than it already is." "You're right. I'm sorry." He adjusted his tie. "Are you ready?" Zoe took a deep breath and nodded. As they walked back toward the altar, she could hear the organ music starting. The guests were standing, turning to look toward the back of the church where she would make her entrance. "Remember," Ethan said quietly, "just focus on making Grandma Eleanor happy. Everything else will figure itself out." But as Zoe took her place at the back of the church, waiting for the wedding march to begin, she wondered if anything about this situation would ever figure itself out. She was about to walk down the aisle toward a man she barely knew, wearing a dress that wasn't hers, making promises she couldn't keep. The music swelled and she took her first step forward. In the front row, Eleanor was glowing with happiness, her hands clasped together in delight. For her sake, Zoe put on the biggest smile she could manage and walked toward what might be either the kindest thing she'd ever done or the biggest mistake of her life. Walking down the aisle felt like moving through a dream. Zoe kept her eyes focused on Eleanor's beaming face in the front row, using the elderly woman's joy as an anchor to keep herself from panicking. The church was fuller than she had expected. At least 100 people had come to witness Ethan's wedding, and they were all looking at her with warm smiles and happy tears. The wedding march seemed to go on forever. With each step, Zoe became more aware of how surreal this moment was. 12 hours ago, she had been getting ready for her own wedding to Christopher. Now she was wearing a stranger's dress, walking toward a different altar, about to marry a man whose last name she had learned 5 minutes ago. Ethan stood at the front of the church looking nervous but grateful. When their eyes met, he mouthed "thank you," so softly that only she could see it. Despite everything, Zoe felt a flutter of something, not attraction exactly but connection. They were two people who had found each other in crisis and chosen to help rather than abandon. When she reached the altar, Ethan offered her his arm and she took it. His hand was steady, which helped calm her own nerves. Pastor Rodriguez smiled at the congregation. "Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to witness the union of Ethan James Parker and Zoe." He paused, looking at her expectantly. Zoe's mind went blank. She hadn't thought about what last name to give. "Williams," she said quickly, using her mother's maiden name. "Ethan James Parker and Zoe Williams," the pastor continued. "Marriage is a sacred commitment, a joining not just of two hearts but of two lives, two families, two futures." As he spoke about love and commitment, Zoe found herself actually listening instead of just waiting for it to be over. The words were beautiful, talking about how marriage was about choosing to stand by someone through all of life's challenges, about building something together that was stronger than what either person could create alone. "Ethan," Pastor Rodriguez said, "do you take Zoe to be your wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do you part?" Ethan looked directly into Zoe's eyes as he answered, "I do." His voice was clear and certain, and for a moment, Zoe forgot that this wasn't real. "Zoe," the pastor turned to her, "do you take Ethan to be your husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish until death do you part?" The words stuck in Zoe's throat for a moment. Even though this was fake, even though it was just for Eleanor, saying these vows felt significant. "I do," she finally managed. The rings? Pastor Rodriguez asked. Zoe's heart stopped. They hadn't thought about rings. But Ethan smoothly reached into his pocket and pulled out a simple gold band. Probably the ring that had been meant for Amanda. This ring is a symbol of my commitment to you, Ethan said, sliding it onto Zoe's finger. It was slightly too big, but it stayed on. With this ring, I promise to stand by you, to support you, and to choose you every day. Zoe realized she was supposed to give him a ring too, but she had nothing. Then she remembered the simple silver band she wore on her right hand. A ring her grandmother had given her years ago. She slipped it off and placed it on Ethan's finger. This ring is a symbol of my commitment to you, she said, trying to remember what Ethan had said. With this ring, I promise to stand by you, to support you, and to choose you every day. Pastor Rodriguez raised his hands. By the power vested in me by the state and by God, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Ethan, you may kiss your bride. This was the moment Zoe had been dreading. She and Ethan had been so focused on getting through the ceremony that they hadn't discussed this part. But as Ethan leaned toward her, she met him halfway. The kiss was soft, brief, and completely chaste, the kind of kiss you might give a friend. But somehow, in front of all these people who believed they were in love, it felt more intimate than it should have. The congregation erupted in applause and cheers. In the front row, Eleanor was crying happy tears, clapping her hands together with pure joy. Seeing her happiness made everything else worth it. Ladies and gentlemen, Pastor Rodriguez announced, I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Parker. Mrs. Parker. Zoe had never changed her name for Christopher. They had decided she would keep Williams professionally. But hearing herself called Mrs. Parker in front of a church full of people felt strange and thrilling and terrifying all at once. As they walked back down the aisle together, Ethan squeezed her hand. Thank you, he whispered. You saved the day. The receiving line was overwhelming. Person after person hugged Zoe, told her how beautiful she looked, how happy they were for her and Ethan. She tried to remember names and faces, tried to respond appropriately to comments about their whirlwind romance, and how perfect they were together. I haven't seen Ethan this happy in years, one of his cousins told her. Whatever you did to him, keep doing it. An elderly man who introduced himself as Ethan's uncle pulled her aside. That boy has been through a lot, losing his parents so young. Eleanor did her best, but he's always been a little guarded, you know? But look at him now, he can't stop smiling. You're good for him. With each comment, Zoe felt the weight of their deception grow heavier. These people genuinely cared about Ethan and wanted him to be happy. They were investing emotionally in a relationship that didn't exist. Eleanor was the last person in the receiving line, and she hugged Zoe tightly. Welcome to the family, sweetheart. I'm so proud to have you as my granddaughter. Thank you, Zoe managed, her voice thick with emotion. You know, Eleanor said quietly, I was worried about that other girl. Amanda. Something about her never felt quite right. But you have kind eyes. I can tell you really love my grandson. Zoe glanced at Ethan, who was talking to the pastor a few feet away. He's a good man, she said, which was true enough. He is. And he deserves to be happy. Promise me you'll take care of each other? I promise, Zoe said, and meant it more than she expected to. The reception was held in the church's fellowship hall, which had been decorated with simple flowers and white tablecloths. It wasn't elaborate, but it was warm and welcoming. Zoe found herself seated at the head table next to Ethan, facing a room full of people who were celebrating their fake marriage. How are you holding up? Ethan asked quietly as the caterers served dinner. It's harder than I thought it would be, Zoe admitted. Everyone is so genuinely happy for us. Your uncle told me I'm good for you, and your grandmother made me promise to take care of you. I know. I didn't expect people to be so. He searched for the word. Invested. Yeah. I thought we'd do a quick ceremony and that would be it. But they want to know how we met, when we knew we were in love, what our plans are. What have you been telling them? That we met at a coffee shop and it was love at first sight. That we decided not to wait because life is short. He took a sip of his water. What about you? I told your cousin Sarah that you swept me off my feet, and I told your aunt that we're planning to buy a house with a big yard. Zoe shook her head. I'm not a good liar. This is getting complicated. Before Ethan could respond, someone tapped a knife against a glass and the room fell quiet. Speech. Speech, several people called out. Ethan stood up looking panicked. I'm not really prepared for a speech. Come on, his uncle called out. Tell us about your beautiful bride. Ethan looked down at Zoe, and she could see him struggling for words. Finally he cleared his throat. I never expected to find someone like Zoe, he began. This morning I was just a guy going through the motions thinking I knew what I wanted out of life. But then I met her and everything changed. The room was completely silent, everyone hanging on his words. Zoe is the kind of person who helps strangers without expecting anything in return. She's brave enough to take risks, kind enough to put other people's happiness before her own, and strong enough to face any challenge that comes her way. Zoe felt tears prick her eyes. He was talking about her decision to help him, but he was saying it in a way that made it sound like a love story. I'm the luckiest man in the world to call her my wife, Ethan finished. And I promise to spend every day trying to deserve her. The room erupted in applause and Zoe had to blink back tears. It was just an act, she reminded herself. He was just saying what people wanted to hear. But when he sat back down and took her hand, when he smiled at her with genuine warmth and gratitude, she felt something shift inside her chest. For just a moment, she let herself imagine what it would be like if this were real, if someone actually felt about her the way Ethan had just described. The thought scared her more than anything else that had happened all day. 3 days after the wedding, Zoe found herself standing in the hallway of Ethan's apartment building, holding a suitcase and wondering how her life had become so complicated. What was supposed to have been a single afternoon of kindness had somehow evolved into a temporary living arrangement. I know this is asking a lot, Ethan had said when he called her the day after the ceremony. But Grandma Eleanor wants to have us over for dinner tomorrow night. She's been cooking all day, planning this welcome to the family meal. Can't you just tell her I'm sick? I tried that. She said she'd come over and take care of you herself. She's really excited about having a granddaughter, Zoe. I don't think she's going to be satisfied with just the wedding. She wants to be part of our lives. Now, as Ethan opened his apartment door, Zoe felt like she was crossing a line she couldn't uncross. This is temporary, she said firmly, wheeling her suitcase inside. Just until we figure out how to handle your grandmother without breaking her heart. Absolutely. Temporary. Ethan closed the door behind her. I set up the guest room for you. Clean sheets, towels in the bathroom, everything you should need. The apartment was nicer than Zoe had expected, a 2-bedroom unit with large windows and hardwood floors. It was clearly a bachelor pad with minimal furniture and a kitchen that looked barely used, but it was clean and comfortable. The guest room is down the hall, Ethan said, leading the way. I cleared out the closet and there's a desk if you need to work. The room was small but adequate, with a double bed and a dresser. Someone had put fresh flowers on the nightstand, probably Eleanor, Zoe realized. Your grandmother was here? She insisted on helping me get ready for your arrival. She brought groceries, flowers, even some of your favorite tea. Ethan looked embarrassed. I had to guess at what your favorite tea might be. What did you tell her? Earl Grey. Was I close? Actually, yes. Zoe set her suitcase on the bed. This is so weird, Ethan. We're playing house for a woman we're lying to, and I don't even know basic things about you. Like what you do for work, or whether you're a morning person, or if you leave dishes in the sink. Event planning, Ethan said. I'm definitely not a morning person, and I'm actually pretty neat. What about you? Graphic designer. I am a morning person and I'm neat too, thank God. Zoe sat on the edge of the bed. We need ground rules if this is going to work. Agreed. What kind of rules? Kitchen rules, bathroom rules, space rules. And we need to get our story straight about how we met, how long we've been together, all the details people are going to ask about. Ethan nodded. You're right. Want to do this over dinner? I can order pizza and we can figure out how to be fake married. An hour later, they sat at Ethan's small dining table with pizza boxes between them and a notebook where Zoe was writing down their fictional relationship history. Okay, she said, pen poised. How long have we been together? Well, we need enough time to justify getting married, but not so long that people wonder why they've never met you. 6 months? That works. We met at. Ethan thought for a moment. Actually, let's pick somewhere we both actually go. Where do you get coffee? There's a place called Brew and Books on 5th Street. I go there most mornings before work. Perfect. I know that place. We met there 6 months ago. You were reading a book, I asked about it, we started talking. Zoe wrote it down. What book was I reading? Something romantic but not too cheesy. Pride and Prejudice? I can work with that. Okay, first date? Dinner at Rosario's Italian. It's where I take people when I want to impress them, so it fits. Good. When did we know we were serious? Ethan was quiet for a moment, twirling cheese around his fork. Maybe 3 months in? We took a weekend trip to the mountains and we just clicked. Everything felt easy and right. That's very specific. I almost took Amanda on that trip, but she canceled last minute. I ended up going alone and having a great time. It would have been better with the right person though. Zoe looked at him curiously. Do you think Amanda was ever the right person? Honestly, I don't know. I thought she was, but maybe I was just trying to convince myself because it was time to settle down. My friends were all getting married, Grandma Eleanor was asking about grandchildren. He shrugged. Maybe I wanted to be in love more than I actually was in love. That's a dangerous way to make life decisions. Yeah, I'm figuring that out. Ethan took a bite of pizza. What about you? Were you in love with your fiancé? Zoe considered the question. I thought I was. Christopher and I made sense on paper. We both wanted the same things, house in the suburbs, 2 kids, stable careers. But looking back, I'm not sure we ever had the kind of connection where we could talk for hours or couldn't wait to see each other. Do you miss him? I miss the plan, Zoe said slowly. I miss knowing what my life was going to look like. But do I miss him specifically? I don't know. Is that terrible? It's honest. Ethan refilled their water glasses. Speaking of Christopher, what did you tell him about not showing up to your own wedding? Zoe's stomach dropped. Oh God. I completely forgot to call him back. He's been texting me all day. She grabbed her phone and saw 17 missed messages. What are you going to tell him? I don't know. The truth, I guess. That the dress situation made me realize I wasn't ready, that I needed time to think. She looked at the messages, all variations of, where are you, and, are you okay, and please call me. This is going to break his heart. Better to break his heart now than after years of marriage when you figure out you weren't right for each other. Is that what you think happened with Amanda? Maybe. Or maybe she just got scared. Either way, she did us both a favor by being honest. Ethan gathered the empty pizza boxes. Do you want to call Christopher now, get it over with? No. I need to do it in person. But not tonight. Tonight I need to process the fact that I'm living with a stranger and trying to remember to answer to Mrs. Parker. About that, Ethan said. We should probably figure out the physical stuff too. I mean, Eleanor is going to expect us to be affectionate. Holding hands, sitting close together, that kind of thing. Zoe felt her cheeks warm. Right. Because married couples do that. We don't have to practice or anything weird like that. Just, be prepared for it. And let me know if anything makes you uncomfortable. Same to you. Zoe stood up to help clear the table. This is the strangest conversation I've ever had. Tell me about it. I keep expecting to wake up and find out this whole week has been a dream. As they cleaned up the kitchen together, Zoe found herself noticing small details about Ethan. He was left-handed, he hummed while he worked, and he had a small scar on his chin that she hadn't noticed during the wedding ceremony. These were the kinds of things you learned about someone when you lived with them, the ordinary intimacies that came with sharing space. I should probably get some work done, she said when the kitchen was clean. I had to reschedule all my client meetings this week because of the wedding situation. Of course. I have some catching up to do too. Ethan hesitated at the entrance to the hallway. Zoe? Thank you. For all of this. I know it's asking a lot. You're helping me track down my dress, remember? We're helping each other. Still. What you did for Grandma Eleanor, she hasn't stopped talking about how happy she is. The nurse said it's the best she's looked in months. After Ethan went to his room, Zoe sat on the guest bed and finally called her maid of honor. Zoe. Jessica's voice was frantic. Where have you been? Christopher is going crazy, your mom is worried sick, and everyone wants to know what happened to the wedding. I know. I'm sorry. It's complicated. Where are you? Zoe looked around the unfamiliar room. Staying with a friend. Jess, I think I made a mistake. About the wedding, about Christopher, about everything. What do you mean? I mean, I don't think I was marrying him for the right reasons. And when everything went wrong on Saturday, instead of feeling devastated, I felt relieved. Oh honey, are you okay? I think so. Maybe. I don't know. Zoe fell back against the pillows. I need some time to figure things out. Do you want me to come over? We can talk through everything. Not tonight. But soon. I promise I'll explain everything soon. After hanging up, Zoe stared at the ceiling and wondered what she was doing. 3 days ago, she had been preparing to marry Christopher and start the life they had planned together. Now she was living with a man she barely knew, wearing his grandmother's ring, and pretending to be someone she wasn't. The smart thing would be to end this charade tomorrow, tell Eleanor the truth and go back to her real life. But the thought of disappointing the elderly woman, of taking away her happiness, made Zoe's chest ache. From down the hall, she could hear Ethan talking on the phone, probably to a client. His voice was warm and professional, the voice of someone who solved problems for a living. It was comforting to know that at least one of them was good in crisis situations. Her phone buzzed with another text from Christopher. "Please just tell me you're safe. I don't understand what happened, but I'm worried about you." Zoe typed back, "I'm safe. I need some time to think. I'm sorry." It wasn't enough and she knew it. But it was all she could manage tonight. As she got ready for bed in the unfamiliar bathroom, using toiletries she had packed in a rush, Zoe caught sight of herself in the mirror. She looked the same as always, but something in her eyes was different. There was an uncertainty there that hadn't been there a week ago, but also a kind of alertness, like she was finally paying attention to her own life. Maybe that was what happened when you stopped following a plan and started making choices in the moment. Maybe that was what Amanda had figured out before it was too late. Zoe just hoped she could figure out what her own choices should be before she hurt anyone else in the process. 2 weeks into their arrangement, Zoe and Ethan had developed a routine that felt surprisingly natural. They shared morning coffee while reading the news on their phones, took turns cooking dinner, and spent evenings either working in comfortable silence or watching terrible reality TV shows that they both pretended not to enjoy. "This is my guilty pleasure," Ethan admitted one Thursday night as they watched a dating show where people got engaged after knowing each other for 3 days. "I know it's ridiculous, but I can't stop watching." "It's like a car crash," Zoe agreed, curled up on the other end of the couch. "You know it's going to end badly, but you can't look away," says the woman who married a stranger to help his grandmother. "That's different. We're not actually married. Tell that to the state of Texas. We signed legal documents." Zoe nearly choked on her wine. "We what?" "The marriage license. It's real, Zoe. Legally speaking, we're actually married. But it was fake. It doesn't count if it's fake." Ethan paused the TV and turned to face her. "The feelings were fake, but the paperwork was real. I had to get a marriage license for the ceremony to happen, and Pastor Rodriguez filed it." "Oh my God." Zoe set down her wine glass with shaking hands. "Ethan, we're actually married. Like, legally married." "I know. I've been trying to figure out how to bring it up." "How long have you known?" "Since the day after the wedding. I got a call from the county clerk's office confirming the filing." Zoe stared at him. "And you didn't think to mention this?" "I didn't want to panic you. And honestly, it doesn't change anything day to day. We're still just helping each other out." "It changes everything. I'm married to you. What if Christopher finds out? What if my family finds out?" "They won't unless we tell them. And when this is over, we'll get it annulled. It'll be like it never happened." "Annulled?" Zoe laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Ethan, annulments are for marriages that were never consummated or were based on fraud. We can't just erase this. Then we'll get divorced. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" Zoe stood up and started pacing. "I'm legally married to a man I met 3 weeks ago. I have never been married before, and now when I actually want to get married someday, I'll be a divorcee." "You're overreacting." "Am I?" "Because from where I'm standing, you lied to me about something pretty important." Ethan stood up too. "I didn't lie. I just didn't mention it because I knew you'd freak out exactly like this." "Of course I'm freaking out. This isn't some game, Ethan. This is my life." They stared at each other across the living room, the easy comfort of the past 2 weeks suddenly replaced by tension. "You're right," Ethan said finally. "I should have told you immediately. I'm sorry." "Why didn't you?" "Because I was scared you'd leave. And I know that's selfish, but Grandma Eleanor has been so happy these past 2 weeks. She calls me every day to tell me how proud she is, how glad she is that I found someone who makes me smile." "Do you smile more?" Zoe asked despite herself. "What?" "She said I make you smile. Do you smile more now than you did before?" Ethan considered this. "Yeah, actually, I do. Living with you is easy. Fun even. I haven't had fun in a long time." Some of Zoe's anger deflated. "It has been fun. But that doesn't change the fact that we're legally married." "No, it doesn't. But maybe it doesn't have to be the end of the world either." Zoe sank back onto the couch. "My mother is going to kill me when she finds out. She's been planning my wedding since I was 12 years old, and I went and got married without her. She doesn't have to find out." "Ethan, we can't keep this secret forever. What happens when Eleanor wants to meet my family? What happens when people start asking why we don't have wedding photos from our families?" "We'll figure it out." "You keep saying that, but we're not figuring anything out. We're just creating more complications." They sat in silence for a while, both lost in thought. Finally, Ethan spoke. "What if we told people the truth? Not Eleanor, but everyone else. Our friends, your family. What if we explained that we helped each other out and it got complicated? And then what? We stay married forever? No, we get divorced when Eleanor... He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. When she dies. Zoe said it gently. That's what you mean? Yeah. When she dies, we quietly get divorced and go back to our regular lives. That could be months, Ethan. Maybe years. Would that be so terrible? Zoe looked at him carefully. What are you asking me? I'm asking if you hate living here. If being around me is miserable for you. No, she said honestly. It's not miserable. But it's not real either. What if it could be? The question hung in the air between them. Zoe felt her heart start beating faster. What do you mean? I mean, what if we stopped thinking of this as fake and started thinking of it as, I don't know, an unconventional beginning? Ethan. Hear me out. We get along well. We like spending time together. We make each other laugh. We're already married. What if we just saw where it goes? You want to turn our fake marriage into a real one? I want to stop calling it fake and see what happens if we just live our lives together. Zoe felt overwhelmed. This is crazy. People don't build real relationships on lies. But we wouldn't be lying anymore. We'd be figuring out if we actually like each other enough to make this work. And if we don't? Then we get divorced like we planned. But if we do? He shrugged. Maybe we got lucky. Maybe two people who were both about to marry the wrong person found the right person instead. I need to think about this. Of course. Take all the time you need. That night, Zoe lay in bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about Ethan's proposal. It was insane, turning a fake marriage into a real one based on 2 weeks of compatibility. But it was also tempting in a way that scared her. She liked living with Ethan. She liked the way he made coffee in the morning, humming under his breath. She liked that he asked about her work and actually listened to the answers. She liked that he was kind to waitresses and tipped delivery drivers well and called Eleanor every night to check on her. But liking someone wasn't the same as loving them. And marriage was supposed to be about love, wasn't it? Her phone buzzed with a text from Christopher. I know you said you needed space, but it's been 3 weeks. Can we at least talk? Zoe stared at the message for a long time before typing back. I'm sorry, Christopher. I can't see you right now. I need more time. It was the truth, but it wasn't the whole truth. The whole truth was that she was married to someone else and considering whether to stay that way. The next morning, she found Ethan in the kitchen making pancakes. Peace offering, he said, sliding a plate toward her. I know I dropped a lot on you last night. You did. Zoe took a bite. The pancakes were perfect, fluffy and not too sweet. But I've been thinking about what you said. And I think you might be right about one thing. We can't keep living in limbo. Either we end this arrangement now or we commit to seeing where it goes. What do you want to do? Zoe took a deep breath. I want to try. Not because it makes logical sense, but because for the first time in years, I'm doing something that feels right instead of something that looks right on paper. Ethan's face broke into a smile. Really? Really? But we do this honestly from now on. No more secrets, no more lies between us. If we're going to figure out if we can make this work, we need to know who we really are. Agreed. Complete honesty. And we take it slow. Just because we're legally married doesn't mean we jump into being husband and wife. We date each other. We figure out if we actually like each other when we're not in crisis mode. We're going to date while we're married? We're going to date while we're figuring out if we want to stay married. Ethan reached across the table and took her hand. Zoe Parker, would you like to go on a real first date with me tonight? Hearing him call her by his last name sent a flutter through her stomach. Yes, Ethan Parker. I think I would. As they finished breakfast, Zoe realized that she felt lighter than she had in weeks. She was still terrified of what they were attempting, but she was also excited. For the first time since her original wedding fell apart, she was looking forward to what came next instead of mourning what she had lost. Maybe that was what real love was supposed to feel like. Not the comfortable predictability she had felt with Christopher, but this mixture of fear and excitement and possibility. She was about to find out. Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place with checkered tablecloths and wine bottles converted into candle holders. Zoe had changed clothes 3 times, which was ridiculous considering they had been living together for 2 weeks, but somehow this felt different. I'm nervous, she admitted as they were seated. Me too, Ethan said. Isn't that weird? We've been sharing breakfast every morning, but now I'm worried about saying the wrong thing. Maybe because now it matters. Before we were just playing roles. Now we're trying to figure out if we actually like each other. I already know I like you, Ethan said simply. The question is whether you like me when I'm not. Just grateful that you saved my grandmother's feelings. Zoe studied his face across the small table. Tell me something real about yourself. Something you haven't told me because we were keeping things surface level. Ethan thought for a moment. I'm terrified of ending up alone. Not just single but truly alone. When my parents died, the worst part wasn't the grief, it was the fear that I'd never have a real family again. That's probably why I stayed with Amanda longer than I should have. She represented safety, a future where I wouldn't be the last Parker left. That's why Eleanor means so much to you. She's the only family I have left. When she dies. He paused. I've been dreading it for months. Not just losing her, but losing the last person who remembers my parents, who knew me when I was a kid. Zoe reached across the table and touched his hand. You're not going to be alone, Ethan. Even if this thing between us doesn't work out, you have friends, your work family. You're not going to disappear just because Eleanor isn't here anymore. Logically, I know that. But fear isn't logical. No, it's not. Zoe took a sip of wine. My turn for something real? Please. I'm terrified of making the wrong choice. I've spent my whole life planning everything, trying to avoid mistakes. My relationship with Christopher, even my career, I chose them because they were safe, predictable. But being with you, this whole situation, it's the first time I've done something impulsive and it's terrifying. Do you regret it? No. That's what scares me. I should regret it. I should be horrified that I'm married to someone I barely know. But I'm not. I'm excited. And I don't trust my own judgment anymore. Maybe that's good. Maybe trusting your gut instead of your plan is exactly what you need to do. Their conversation was interrupted by the waiter bringing their food, but the momentary pause gave Zoe time to process what Ethan had said. Maybe he was right. Maybe her careful planning had been keeping her safe but also keeping her from really living. Tell me about your work, she said as they ate. What's the best event you've ever planned? Ethan's face lit up. Last year, I planned a surprise anniversary party for a couple who had been married for 50 years. Their kids hired me to coordinate everything, but they wanted it to feel personal, not like some generic celebration. What did you do? I spent weeks interviewing their friends and family, collecting stories and photos. Then I recreated their first date, down to the menu at the restaurant where they met. I hired musicians to play the songs that were popular the year they got engaged. I even tracked down the florist who had done their original wedding and got her to recreate the bouquet. That sounds incredible. The best part was their faces when they walked in. 50 years together and they still looked at each other like teenagers in love. That's what I want someday. Someone who still makes me smile after 50 years. Is that why you do event planning? You like creating perfect moments? I like making people happy. There's something satisfying about taking someone's vision and making it real, you know? Even when it's stressful, even when everything goes wrong, there's usually a moment where you see the client's face light up and you think, this is why I do this. Zoe understood that feeling. It's like graphic design for me. When a client sees their logo for the first time and you can tell it's exactly what they pictured but couldn't articulate, that's the best part of my job. We're both in the business of making dreams real. Except I married you to help make someone else's dream real, and now I'm wondering if it might make my dreams real too. What are your dreams, Zoe? Not your plans, your dreams. It was a good question, and Zoe realized she didn't have a ready answer. I think I've been so focused on what I thought I should want that I forgot to think about what I actually want. What did you want when you were a kid? Before you started planning your life? I wanted to travel. I wanted to see places that looked nothing like where I grew up. I wanted to fall in love with someone who surprised me every day. I wanted to have adventures. What happened to that girl? She grew up. She got practical. She decided that security was more important than adventure. But maybe she was wrong. Zoe met Ethan's eyes. Maybe some things are worth the risk. After dinner, they walked through the downtown area, not ready for the evening to end. The weather was perfect, warm but not humid, with a slight breeze that made Zoe grateful she had worn a dress instead of pants. Can I ask you something? Ethan said as they paused in front of a fountain. Of course. When you were engaged to Christopher, did you ever imagine your life with him 10 years from now? 20 years. Zoe considered this. I had a plan. House, kids, family vacations, retirement savings. But I don't think I ever imagined the day-to-day reality of being married to him. Does that make sense? Perfect sense. I had the same thing with Amanda. I could picture the wedding, the house, even what our kids might look like. But I couldn't picture us having conversations like this one, or laughing together, or just enjoying each other's company. Do you think that should have been a warning sign? Probably. But I was so focused on checking the boxes, successful career, nice girlfriend, ready for marriage, that I forgot to pay attention to whether I was actually happy. They found a bench near the fountain and sat down. The downtown area was busy with other couples, families, groups of friends enjoying the evening. Zoe watched them and wondered if she and Ethan looked like a real couple to the outside world. "Ethan," she said quietly, "what are we doing?" "Really? Honestly? I think we're falling for each other and it's scaring us both." "It is scary. A month ago, I was planning a completely different life. A month ago, I thought I knew exactly what I wanted. Now I'm sitting here with my fake wife, who's becoming less fake every day, and I'm happier than I've been in years. We're probably crazy. Definitely crazy." Ethan turned to face her on the bench. "But I'd rather be crazy with you than safe and miserable with someone else." When he leaned in to kiss her, Zoe didn't pull away. This kiss was different from the chaste peck they had shared at their wedding ceremony. This kiss was real, full of possibility and growing feelings and the acknowledgement that what was happening between them was no longer pretend. When they broke apart, Zoe felt breathless. "Okay," she said. Okay, I'm in. Whatever this is, wherever it goes, I'm in. Even though it's completely insane? Especially because it's completely insane." As they walked back to Ethan's apartment. Their apartment, Zoe corrected herself. She felt like she was floating. For the first time in her adult life, she was choosing something based on how it felt rather than how it looked on paper. It was terrifying and exhilarating and absolutely right. "One more question," she said as Ethan unlocked the front door. "Anything. Are we going to tell Eleanor the truth? About how we really met?" Ethan paused with his key in the lock. "Do you think we should? I think she deserves to know that her grandson found someone who cares about him enough to marry him for her sake. I think that's actually a better love story than meeting in a coffee shop." "You want to tell her we got married so she wouldn't be disappointed?" "I want to tell her we got married for her, but we're staying married for us." Ethan smiled and opened the door. "I love the way your mind works, Zoe Parker. I love that you call me that like it's really my name." "It is really your name. You're really my wife." And for the first time since this whole thing started, Zoe didn't feel the need to correct him. 3 weeks after their first real date, Zoe and Ethan had settled into a rhythm that felt less like roommates and more like an actual married couple. They had been on 6 more dates, shared countless late-night conversations, and graduated from goodnight hugs to goodnight kisses that made Zoe's heart race. The only cloud on their horizon was the growing complexity of maintaining their story with Eleanor and Ethan's extended family. "She wants to meet your parents," Ethan said one morning over coffee, holding his phone where Eleanor had just sent him a text. "She's planning a big family dinner for next weekend, and she specifically asked me to invite your family." Zoe nearly choked on her coffee. "What did you tell her?" "That I'd ask if they were available." "But Zoe, we can't keep making excuses. She's getting suspicious." It was true. Over the past month, Eleanor had asked increasingly specific questions about Zoe's family, her background, her childhood. Zoe had been vague in her answers, claiming her parents were busy with work or traveling, but she could tell the elderly woman was starting to wonder why her new granddaughter-in-law seemed to have no family or friends. "Maybe it's time to come clean," Zoe said. "About everything." "You mean tell her we're not really married?" "No, tell her we are really married, but explain how it happened. The truth, Ethan. All of it." Ethan looked uncertain. What if she's angry? What if she feels manipulated? What if she's hurt that we've been lying to her for 2 months? She's not stupid and she's not fragile. She raised you, didn't she? She must be tougher than you think. Before Ethan could respond, his phone rang. Eleanor's name appeared on the screen. "Hi, Grandma," he answered, putting it on speaker. "Hello, sweetheart. Is Zoe there with you?" "I'm here," Zoe said. "Good morning." "Good morning, dear. I was calling because I wanted to discuss the family dinner next weekend. I've been thinking it's time I met Zoe's people. After all, we're family now." Zoe and Ethan exchanged glances. "Grandma," Ethan said carefully, "about that dinner? Oh, I hope you're not going to tell me you can't make it. I've already invited your cousins and Aunt Carol is driving in from Houston. No, we'll be there. But there's something we need to tell you. Something important." "Oh." Eleanor's voice became alert. "Is everything all right? You're not having problems, are you?" "No problems," Zoe said quickly. "But our situation is a little more complicated than we've let on." "What do you mean, dear?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Grandma, would it be okay if we came over this afternoon to talk? There are some things we should explain in person." "Of course. Come for lunch. I'll make that chicken salad you like. After they hung up, Zoe felt her stomach churning with anxiety. What if this ruins everything? What if she never forgives us for lying? Then we deal with it, Ethan said. But you're right, she deserves the truth. And I'm tired of feeling like we're living a double life. That afternoon, they drove to Eleanor's small house in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Zoe had been there several times over the past month for dinners and Sunday visits, and she had grown genuinely fond of the sharp, witty woman who had raised Ethan. The thought of disappointing her made Zoe feel sick. Eleanor met them at the door with hugs and her usual warm smile. Come in, come in. Lunch is ready. They sat around her small dining table, making small talk about the weather and Ethan's work while they ate. But Zoe could tell Eleanor was waiting for them to explain why they had needed to talk. Finally, Ethan cleared his throat. Grandma, what we need to tell you is about how Zoe and I met. We haven't been completely honest with you. Eleanor set down her fork and folded her hands. I'm listening. We didn't meet at a coffee shop 6 months ago, Zoe said. We met the day we got married. About 2 hours before the ceremony. Eleanor's eyebrows rose, but she didn't interrupt. Amanda left me that morning, Ethan continued. She left a note saying she couldn't go through with the wedding. I was sitting outside a church trying to figure out what to tell everyone when I met Zoe. Zoe was supposed to get married that day too, Ethan said, taking her hand. But there was a mix-up with her wedding dress and another bride was wearing it. So you were both having wedding disasters, Eleanor said slowly. Right. And I asked Zoe to help me. I asked her to pretend to be my bride so you wouldn't be disappointed. So you could have the joy of seeing me married. Eleanor was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. You asked a complete stranger to marry you to make me happy? I know it sounds crazy, Ethan said. But I couldn't bear the thought of disappointing you. You've been so excited, so proud. And the doctors had said. And you agreed? Eleanor asked Zoe. I did. Ethan was so heartbroken about potentially disappointing you, and I was having the worst day of my life anyway. It seemed like helping someone else might give the day some meaning. So the wedding was fake? The feelings were fake, Zoe said carefully. But the ceremony was real. We're legally married. And then what happened? Ethan and Zoe looked at each other. This was the hardest part to explain. Then we got to know each other, Zoe said. We started as strangers helping each other out, but somewhere along the way we became friends. And then more than friends. Are you telling me you fell in love after you got married? We're falling in love, Ethan said honestly. It's still happening. Every day we learn something new about each other and every day it feels more real. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, studying both of their faces. The silence stretched so long that Zoe began to panic. Grandma, Ethan said finally, please say something. I'm thinking, Eleanor said. This is quite a story you've told me. Are you angry? Zoe asked quietly. Angry? Eleanor looked surprised. Dear, why would I be angry? Because we lied to you. Because we tricked you. You didn't trick me. You gave me exactly what I wanted, the chance to see my grandson happy and loved. The fact that it started as an act doesn't change how real it became. Zoe felt tears spring to her eyes. You're not disappointed? Disappointed? Sweetheart, I'm amazed. Do you know how rare it is to find someone who would marry a stranger just to spare an old woman's feelings? Do you know how extraordinary that is? But we should have told you sooner, Ethan said. Perhaps. But I understand why you didn't. You were protecting me just like you were trying to protect me on your wedding day. Eleanor reached across the table and took both of their hands. The question now is, what happens next? What do you mean? Zoe asked. I mean, are you planning to stay married? Are you going to give this real relationship a real chance? Ethan squeezed Zoe's hand. We're trying to figure that out. Well, let me make it easier for you, Eleanor said with a smile. I've been watching you two for the past month and I've never seen Ethan happier. And Zoe dear, you light up when you look at him. Whatever brought you together, whatever the circumstances, what you have now is genuine. How can you tell? Zoe asked. 67 years of marriage taught me a few things about love, sweetheart. Your grandfather and I didn't have the most romantic beginning either. Our parents arranged our marriage. We barely knew each other when we said our vows. But we chose to make it work, chose to build something real together. Love isn't just a feeling you fall into. It's a choice you make every day. And you think we're making that choice? Ethan asked. I think you already have been, for weeks now. You just didn't realize it yet. Eleanor stood up and started clearing the lunch dishes. Now about this family dinner next weekend. Are you going to tell everyone else the truth? Zoe and Ethan looked at each other. Should we? Zoe asked. That's up to you. But I think your family might understand better than you expect, Zoe. After all, any parent who raised a daughter willing to marry a stranger to help his grandmother must have done something right. You really want to meet my parents? Zoe asked. Of course I do. They're my family now too, aren't they? That evening, Zoe sat on her bed, their bed, she was starting to think of it, and dialed her mother's number. Mom? It's me. Zoe. Honey, how are you? I've been so worried since the wedding situation. Are you okay? I'm good, Mom. Really good. But I need to tell you something, and it's going to sound completely crazy. Crazier than leaving your fiancé at the altar? Much crazier. Zoe took a deep breath. Mom, I'm married. The silence on the other end of the phone lasted so long that Zoe wondered if the call had dropped. Mom? I'm here. I'm just processing. Married to whom? His name is Ethan. Ethan Parker. And before you ask, yes, I love him. And yes, he loves me. And no, it's not a rebound thing. Zoe, honey, it's been 6 weeks since your wedding to Christopher fell apart. How can you possibly be married to someone else already? That's the complicated part. Mom, can you and Dad come to Dallas next weekend? There's a family dinner and I'd really like you to meet Ethan and his grandmother. I promise I'll explain everything when you're here. A family dinner? Zoe, what aren't you telling me? A lot. But I promise it all makes sense when you hear the whole story. And Mom? I'm happy. Really, truly happy for the first time in years. Her mother was quiet for another moment. You sound different. Different how? Lighter. Like you've been holding your breath for years and finally let it out. Her mother sighed. All right. Your father and I will drive down Friday night. But Zoe? This better be one hell of a story. It is, Mom. I promise. After hanging up, Zoe found Ethan in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. How did it go? He asked. She's coming. They're both coming. She thinks I've lost my mind, but she's coming. Are you nervous? Terrified. You. Same. But also excited. I want them to see how happy you make me. Zoe moved closer to him, wrapping her arms around his waist. When did this become real for you? When did you stop thinking of me as the stranger who helped you out and start thinking of me as your wife? Ethan considered this, his arms coming around her. The morning I woke up and my first thought wasn't about Amanda or the wedding that didn't happen, but about whether you wanted coffee or tea with breakfast. When taking care of you became more important than protecting myself. For me, it was when you called me Mrs. Parker and I didn't want to correct you. When was that? About 3 weeks ago. The day we had our first real fight about the legal paperwork. Even when I was angry with you, hearing you call me your wife made me feel like I belonged somewhere. You do belong somewhere. You belong here with me. As they stood in their kitchen, holding each other, Zoe marveled at how much her life had changed. 2 months ago, she had been planning a safe, predictable future with Christopher. Now she was married to a man who had started as a stranger and become the person she most wanted to talk to at the end of each day. Ethan? Yeah. I think I'm falling in love with you. Actually falling in love, not just going through the motions. Just falling? He pulled back to look at her face. Because I'm pretty sure I've already landed. When he kissed her, Zoe felt something click into place in her chest. This was what love was supposed to feel like. Not the careful affection she had felt for Christopher, but this overwhelming sense of rightness, of coming home. Maybe Eleanor was right. Maybe love wasn't just something you fell into, but something you chose to build. And if that was true, then she and Ethan had been building something real from the very beginning, one honest conversation and shared laugh and moment of kindness at a time. The family dinner next weekend would be a test, but for the first time since this whole adventure began, Zoe wasn't worried about the outcome. Whatever happened, she and Ethan would face it together. And that, she realized, was what marriage was really supposed to be about. The week leading up to the family dinner passed in a blur of nervous energy and careful planning. Zoe cleaned their apartment twice, bought new clothes and practiced explaining their story to her reflection in the bathroom mirror. Ethan was equally anxious, reorganizing his already organized closet and making lists of conversation topics that might help their parents connect. What if they hate each other? Zoe asked on Thursday night as they sat on the couch, both too wired to focus on the TV. They won't hate each other. Eleanor loves everyone and your parents raised you, so they must be good people. What if they think we're crazy for staying married? Then we'll prove them wrong by being happy together. Zoe was about to respond when her phone rang. Christopher's name appeared on the screen and her stomach dropped. She had been dreading this call for weeks. Don't answer it, Ethan said, seeing her hesitate. I have to. He deserves an explanation and I can't keep avoiding him forever. She stepped into the bedroom and closed the door before answering. Hi, Christopher. Zoe, thank God. I've been trying to reach you for 2 months. Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm sorry I haven't called you back. I know I owe you an explanation. You don't owe me anything except honesty. What happened that day? 1 minute we were getting married, the next you disappeared. Zoe sat on the edge of the bed trying to find the right words. Christopher, I realized I wasn't ready. That we weren't ready. That maybe we were getting married for the wrong reasons. What do you mean wrong reasons? I mean we were getting married because it was time, because it made sense, because it's what people do when they've been together for 3 years. Not because we couldn't imagine life without each other. Christopher was quiet for a moment. Is there someone else? The question hung in the air. Zoe could lie, make this easier for both of them. But she had promised Ethan complete honesty, and that had to extend to everyone in her life. Yes, she said quietly. There is. How long? Christopher. How long have you been seeing someone else? It's not what you think. I didn't leave you for him. I left because I realized I wasn't in love with you the way I should be. And then I met someone who showed me what being in love actually feels like. Who is he? It doesn't matter. It matters to me. 3 years, Zoe. We were together for 3 years and you threw it away for someone you've known for what, a few weeks? Zoe closed her eyes. I didn't throw anything away. I saved us both from a marriage that would have made us miserable. You don't know that. Yes, I do. Christopher, when did you last think about me when I wasn't right in front of you? When did you last miss me? When did you last do something just because you thought it would make me smile? The silence stretched long enough that Zoe had her answer. That's not fair, Christopher said finally. It's not about fair. It's about the fact that we were settling for each other, and we both deserve better than that. So you're with him now? This new guy? Yes. Are you happy? The question surprised her with its gentleness. Yes, I'm happy. Then I guess that's what matters. Christopher's voice was sad but not angry. I wish you had figured that out before we sent out 200 wedding invitations. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry about that, about all of it. You're a good man, Christopher. You deserve someone who thinks about you the way I think about him. Yeah. After they hung up, Zoe sat in the quiet bedroom for a while, processing the conversation. It had gone better than she had expected, but it had also made her relationship with Ethan feel more real. She wasn't just exploring possibilities anymore. She was choosing Ethan over Christopher, choosing this uncertain but exhilarating future over the safe, planned life she had been building. When she returned to the living room, Ethan looked up expectantly. How did it go? Better than I expected. He's hurt, but he's not angry. And I think he knows we weren't right for each other. Zoe curled up next to Ethan on the couch. I told him about you. What did you tell him? That you showed me what being in love actually feels like. Ethan pulled her closer. And what does it feel like? Like I'm home and on an adventure at the same time. Like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, even though it's nothing like where I planned to be. I love you, Ethan said simply. I know it's fast, I know it's crazy, but I love you. I love you too. Saying it out loud felt like jumping off a cliff, thrilling and terrifying. I'm in love with my own husband. How weird is that? Pretty weird. But I like weird. Friday evening brought Zoe's parents and with them, a new level of anxiety. Zoe waited by the window, watching for their car like a teenager waiting for a first date. They're here, she announced and immediately started second-guessing her outfit choice. Ethan stood up and straightened his shirt. Ready? No. But let's do it anyway. Zoe's parents looked exactly like what they were, successful professionals in their 50s who had driven 4 hours to figure out what their daughter had gotten herself into. Her father, Michael, was tall and serious-looking, while her mother, Linda, was petite and elegant with the kind of warm smile that made everyone feel welcome. Mom, Dad, this is Ethan, Zoe said, her voice only slightly strained. Ethan, these are my parents, Michael and Linda Williams. It's wonderful to meet you both, Ethan said, shaking Michael's hand and accepting Linda's hug. I know this is all very sudden. Sudden is one word for it, Michael said dryly. Zoe tells us you two got married? We did. And I know how it must look, but I love your daughter very much. Linda studied Ethan's face carefully. And she loves you? I hope so. I do, Zoe said quickly. I really do. They ordered dinner from a nearby restaurant and sat around Ethan's small dining table while Zoe and Ethan told their story. Zoe watched her parents' faces as they explained about the wedding dress mix-up, the chance meeting, the decision to help Eleanor, and how their fake marriage had become real. "Let me see if I understand this," Michael said when they finished. "You married a complete stranger to help his grandmother, and then decided to stay married because you fell in love?" "That's an accurate summary," Zoe said. "And you're happy?" Linda asked. "Happier than I've ever been." "What about Christopher? You were engaged to him for a year." "Christopher and I were engaged because it was time to get engaged. We were together because we looked good on paper together. But I never felt about him the way I feel about Ethan." "Which is how?" Michael asked. Zoe looked at Ethan, trying to find words for something that felt bigger than language. "Like I didn't know I was holding my breath until I could finally breathe. Like every day is interesting because I get to share it with him. Like I want to be the best version of myself because he sees things in me that I didn't know were there." Linda's expression softened. "Oh, sweetheart. I know it sounds crazy." "It doesn't sound crazy," Linda said. "It sounds like love. Real love, not convenient love." Michael was less easily convinced. "Ethan, what are your intentions with my daughter?" "Dad," Zoe protested, but Ethan held up a hand. "It's a fair question." He turned to face Michael directly. "Sir, I intend to love your daughter for the rest of my life. I intend to support her dreams, to be her partner in whatever comes next, and to never take for granted the gift of having her choose me every day. And if this doesn't work out, if the novelty wears off, then we'll face that honestly like adults. But I don't think it will. What Zoe and I have isn't based on novelty, it's based on genuine compatibility, shared values, and the kind of connection I've never had with anyone else." Michael studied Ethan for a long moment, then nodded. "All right. But you hurt her and you'll answer to me." "Understood." The rest of the evening went better than Zoe had dared hope. Her parents asked about Ethan's work, his family, his plans for the future. They shared stories about Zoe's childhood, her career, her dreams. By the time they left for their hotel, Zoe could tell that while they were still processing the situation, they genuinely liked Ethan. "He's good for you," Linda said as she hugged Zoe goodbye. "I can see it in your face, in the way you carry yourself. You're more yourself than you've been in years. You think I'm crazy, don't you? I think you're brave. And I think sometimes the best things in life happen when we stop trying to control everything and start trusting our hearts." That night, as Zoe and Ethan got ready for bed, she felt a sense of relief she hadn't expected. "They like you," she said. "Your dad is scary, but I think I passed the test." "He's not scary, he's protective. There's a difference. I'm glad they're coming to dinner tomorrow. Eleanor is going to love them." Zoe brushed her teeth and thought about how surreal it was that tomorrow night, their families would meet because of a marriage that had started as complete fiction. But it didn't feel fictional anymore. It felt like the most real thing that had ever happened to her. "Ethan?" "Yeah. Tomorrow, after everyone meets, after the dinner, I want to do something." "What?" "I want to have a real wedding. Just us, just something small and private where we choose each other because we want to, not because we're helping someone else or solving a problem." Ethan stopped brushing his teeth and stared at her in the bathroom mirror. "You want to marry me again?" "I want to marry you for real this time. The first time was for Eleanor. This time would be for us." "Are you proposing to me, Mrs. Parker?" "I think I am, Mr. Parker." Ethan turned around and pulled her into his arms, toothpaste foam and all. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." As they kissed in their small bathroom, Zoe marveled at how perfect this imperfect moment felt. This was what love looked like, not flowers and candlelight and perfect timing, but toothpaste kisses and shared laughter and the absolute certainty that this person was her person forever. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new complications, new opportunities for things to go wrong. But tonight, in their bathroom, planning their second wedding to each other, everything felt exactly right. The family dinner at Eleanor's house started beautifully. Both sets of parents arrived within minutes of each other, and the introductions went smoothly. Eleanor charmed Zoe's parents with stories about Ethan's childhood, while Michael and Linda shared tales of Zoe's artistic talents and independent spirit. She was always bringing home stray animals, Linda told Eleanor as they worked together in the kitchen. Cats, dogs, even a turtle once. She couldn't stand to see anything that needed help. "That explains a lot," Eleanor said with a knowing smile, glancing at Ethan and Zoe in the living room. The first hint of trouble came when Ethan's Aunt Carol arrived with her husband and teenage daughter. "Where's Amanda?" Carol asked immediately upon entering. "I thought she'd be here too." Zoe felt Ethan tense beside her. They had told Eleanor the truth, but not the rest of the extended family. Amanda and I aren't together anymore, Ethan said carefully. This is my wife, Zoe. Carol looked confused. Your wife? But when did you? I thought you were marrying Amanda next month? There was a change of plans, Eleanor said smoothly, appearing from the kitchen. Ethan and Zoe had a whirlwind romance. Sometimes when you know, you know. But I just bought a dress for Amanda's wedding, Carol's daughter, Sarah, said. Mom made me get it specially for the ceremony. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Zoe could feel her parents exchanging glances, clearly realizing there was more to the story than they had been told. Life is full of surprises, Michael said diplomatically, but his tone suggested he wanted answers. Eleanor served dinner and tried to keep the conversation light, but Zoe could tell that several people at the table were confused and suspicious. Carol kept asking pointed questions about the timeline of Zoe and Ethan's relationship, while Sarah openly stared at Zoe like she was trying to solve a puzzle. So how long have you two actually been together? Carol asked during the main course. Because I talked to Ethan just 3 months ago, and he was definitely still planning to marry Amanda. Zoe felt heat creep up her neck. We've been together for a few months. A few months? And you're already married? Carol's voice was incredulous. Ethan, that's not like you at all. You've always been so careful about big decisions. When you meet the right person, timing doesn't matter, Ethan said, but Zoe could hear the strain in his voice. But what happened to Amanda? She just disappeared? Carol, Eleanor said firmly, that's enough questions for now. Let's enjoy our dinner. But the damage was done. The easy atmosphere of the evening had been replaced by tension and curiosity. Zoe excused herself to help Eleanor with dessert, desperate for a moment away from the table. I'm sorry, Eleanor said quietly as they stood in the kitchen. I should have prepared Carol better. It's not your fault. We knew this would be complicated. Are you having second thoughts? Zoe considered this. Not about Ethan. But maybe about continuing to lie to people. It feels wrong, especially with my parents here. Eleanor nodded. Perhaps it's time for complete honesty with everyone. When they returned to the dining room with coffee and pie, Zoe made a decision. Actually, she said, setting down her coffee cup, there is something Ethan and I need to tell everyone. Ethan looked at her with surprise but nodded. Zoe's right. We haven't been completely honest about how we met. Oh no, Carol said dramatically. I knew something was fishy about this whole situation. It's not fishy, Zoe said firmly. It's just unconventional. They told the whole story again. The wedding disasters, the chance meeting, the decision to help Eleanor, the gradual development of real feelings. Zoe watched her parents' faces as they realized they hadn't heard the complete truth earlier. So you've only actually known each other for 2 months? Linda asked. 2 months and 3 weeks, Zoe corrected. And you're actually legally married? We are. Carol shook her head. This is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. You married a complete stranger? She married him to make me happy, Eleanor said sharply. To spare an old woman's feelings. I think that shows remarkable character. It shows remarkable stupidity, Carol shot back. What kind of person marries someone they don't know? The kind of person who puts other people's happiness before her own, Ethan said, his voice getting heated. The kind of person who sees someone in pain and tries to help instead of walking away. But you're not really married, Sarah said, looking confused. I mean, not for real. We are for real, Zoe said. We started fake, but we're real now. How can you be sure? Carol asked. How do you know you're not just caught up in some fantasy? Playing house with a stranger? Because I know how I feel when I'm with him, Zoe said. I know that I've never been happier, never felt more like myself than I do with Ethan. I know that what we have is more real than anything I've ever experienced. But you left your fiancé at the altar, Carol pressed. How do we know you won't do the same thing to Ethan when the novelty wears off? Carol? Eleanor snapped. That's enough. But Zoe felt like she'd been slapped. The accusation hit too close to her own fears, her own doubts about whether she could trust her own feelings. Maybe she has a point, Zoe said quietly. Maybe I am the kind of person who runs away when things get complicated. No, Ethan said firmly. You're not. How do you know? We've been living in a bubble, pretending to be married, playing at being happy. What happens when real life hits? When we have to deal with mortgages and bills and everyday problems. We deal with them together. But what if we can't? What if this only works because it's been so intense and dramatic? What if we're just addicted to the crisis? The room fell silent. Zoe could feel everyone staring at her, could see the concern in her parents' faces and the satisfaction in Carol's. Are you saying you want out? Ethan asked quietly. I'm saying maybe we should be realistic about what this is. Maybe we're both just rebounding from our broken engagements, and we're confusing gratitude and proximity with love. Do you really believe that? Zoe looked at Ethan's face, saw the hurt and fear there, and felt her heart break a little. I don't know what I believe anymore. Ethan stood up abruptly. I need some air. He left through the back door, and Zoe could see him through the window, standing alone in Eleanor's small garden with his hands in his pockets. Well, Carol said with grim satisfaction. I think that settles it. Carol, shut up, Eleanor said with more force than Zoe had ever heard from her. Zoe dear, what just happened? I panicked, Zoe admitted, tears starting to fall. She's right, isn't she? This whole thing is crazy. People don't build real marriages on lies and fake ceremonies and love. Linda interrupted. Because that's what I saw when you talked about him earlier. That's what I see when you look at each other. But how can I trust it? How can I trust myself? 2 months ago I was planning to marry someone else. Someone you didn't love, Michael pointed out. Someone you were settling for. That's completely different. Is it? How do I know I'm not settling again? How do I know this isn't just another mistake? Eleanor leaned forward and took Zoe's hands. Because I've been married, dear. For 67 years. And what you and Ethan have, the way you care for each other, the way you bring out the best in each other, that's not settling. That's not a mistake. That's love. But it happened so fast. So what? Your grandfather and I knew we were meant for each other after our second conversation. Sometimes love hits you like lightning and sometimes it grows slowly. Neither way is wrong. Zoe wiped her eyes. I heard him. Did you see his face? I heard him because I got scared. Then go fix it, Linda said simply. Go tell him what you really feel instead of what you're afraid to feel. Zoe found Ethan sitting on the garden bench, staring at Eleanor's roses. He didn't look up when she approached. I'm sorry, she said, sitting beside him. I'm so sorry. Are you? Or are you just sorry you hurt my feelings? I'm sorry I let her get in my head. I'm sorry I panicked and said things I didn't mean. Did you mean them? Even a little? Zoe was quiet for a moment, trying to be completely honest. I meant that I'm scared. I meant that this feels too good to be true and I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop. But I didn't mean that what we have isn't real. What do you mean? I mean I love you. I mean that every day with you feels like a gift. I mean that when Carol was attacking our relationship, my instinct wasn't to agree with her but to defend what we have. But then she said that thing about me leaving you like I left Christopher, and I got scared that maybe I don't know how to stick with something when it gets hard. Ethan finally looked at her. Do you want to stick with this? With us? More than anything. Even when it's scary, even when people think we're crazy, even when I don't understand how we got so lucky. I want to stick with us. Then that's all that matters. Ethan took her hand. Zoe, I'm scared too. I'm scared that you'll realize you could do better. I'm scared that this is too good to last. But I'm more scared of losing you than I am of taking the risk. I don't want to do better. I want to do right. And you feel right to me. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, holding hands in Eleanor's garden as the sun set behind them. We should probably go back inside, Zoe said eventually. Face the music. Yeah. But first, are we okay? Really okay? We're better than okay. We're real. When they returned to the dining room, the family dinner was wrapping up. Carol and her family were preparing to leave, and Zoe could tell from Eleanor's expression that words had been exchanged in their absence. We're sorry for the drama, Ethan said to the room in general. Don't apologize, Eleanor said firmly. Young love is supposed to be passionate. If you weren't a little scared of how much you feel for each other, I'd be worried. Carol gathered her purse and coat. Well, I still think this whole thing is a mistake, but I hope I'm wrong. You are wrong, Zoe said calmly. But thank you for caring about Ethan. After the extended family left, Zoe's parents helped clean up while Eleanor pulled Zoe and Ethan aside. I owe you both an apology, she said. I should have prepared everyone better. I should have told Carol the truth beforehand instead of putting you in that position. It's okay, Ethan said. Maybe it was good to get it all out in the open. And I want you both to know something, Eleanor continued. What you have is real. I've seen enough marriages to know the difference between genuine love and wishful thinking. Don't let anyone make you doubt that. As they said goodbye to Zoe's parents and cleaned up the last of the dinner dishes, Zoe felt a sense of relief. The truth was finally completely out there, with all the mess and complication that came with it. Not everyone understood their choices, But the people who mattered most, Eleanor, her parents, and most importantly each other, were on the same page. "So," Ethan said as they drove home, "still want to have that second wedding?" "More than ever. I want to marry you when we're both completely sure, completely honest, and completely ready to choose each other for all the right reasons." "When?" "Soon. This weekend maybe. Just us, just the commitment, just the truth. I love you, Zoe Parker. I love you too, Ethan Parker. And I'm done being scared of that." Saturday morning arrived crisp and clear, the kind of perfect October day that made everything feel possible. Zoe woke up in Ethan's arms, their arms, she corrected herself, and felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced since this whole adventure began. "Good morning, husband," she said softly. "Good morning, wife. Ready to marry me again?" "I've been ready for weeks. I just needed to stop being afraid of being ready." They had planned their second wedding for that afternoon, just the two of them, Pastor Rodriguez and Eleanor as their witness. It would be held in the small chapel behind St. Mark's, where they had first met on the steps just 3 months before. "I still can't believe we're doing this," Ethan said as they shared coffee and toast in their kitchen. "Having second thoughts?" "Never. But it is surreal. Most people have bachelor parties and months of planning before their weddings. We're having ours on a Saturday afternoon with 3 hours' notice. Most people aren't us." Zoe curled her legs under her on the chair. "Besides, we already did the big wedding with all the planning and stress. This one gets to be just about love." "What are you going to wear?" "I found something perfect yesterday while you were at work." Zoe had spent her lunch break shopping for a dress that would be entirely hers, entirely chosen for this moment. "What about you?" "The same suit I wore to our first wedding. It seems fitting." "Our fake wedding, you mean?" "No," Ethan said thoughtfully. "I don't think it was fake anymore. I think we just didn't know it was real at the time." Zoe considered this. "You might be right. Maybe we've been married since the day we met. Maybe everything since then has just been us figuring out what that means." At noon they drove to the chapel together, both nervous and excited in the way that people are when they're about to make a choice that will change everything. Eleanor was already there, wearing a navy dress and holding a small bouquet of flowers. "For the bride," she said, handing the bouquet to Zoe. "I picked them from my garden this morning." "They're beautiful," Zoe said, touched by the gesture. The flowers were simple, roses, baby's breath, and greenery, but they were chosen with love. Pastor Rodriguez emerged from the chapel, smiling warmly. "Are we ready for round 2? "We're ready," Ethan said, taking Zoe's hand. "This time I'd like to hear your own vows," Pastor Rodriguez said. "The words that come from your hearts, not from a book." They stood facing each other in the small chapel, sunlight streaming through the stained glass windows and painting rainbow colors across the floor. This felt completely different from their first ceremony, quieter, more intimate, more theirs. "Ethan," Zoe began, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes, "3 months ago, you were a stranger sitting on church steps and I was a woman in the wrong wedding dress. We were both having the worst day of our lives and somehow we found each other." She paused, looking into his eyes. "You asked me to help save your grandmother's happiness, and I said yes because it seemed like the right thing to do. But what I didn't know was that saying yes to you that day was also saying yes to the best version of myself." Ethan squeezed her hands. "You've taught me that love isn't about finding someone who fits into your plans. It's about finding someone who makes you want to throw out all your plans and build something better together. You've shown me what it feels like to be chosen every day, not just once." Zoe's voice grew stronger. "So today I'm choosing you again. Not because we're helping someone else, not because it's convenient, but because you're my person, Ethan. You're my home and my adventure, my comfort and my challenge. I promise to love you through whatever comes next, to choose us even when it's scary, and to never again let fear make decisions for my heart." Ethan wiped his eyes before speaking. "Zoe, when Amanda left that morning, I thought my life was falling apart. But now I realize it was actually falling into place. Because if she hadn't left, I never would have been sitting on those steps. I never would have met you." His voice was thick with emotion. "You saved me that day, but not in the way I thought. You didn't just save my grandmother's feelings or my family's expectations. You saved me from settling for a life that looked right but felt wrong. You saved me from giving up on the possibility of real love." Eleanor dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. "You are the kindest person I know," Ethan continued. "Kind enough to marry a stranger to help his grandmother. Brave enough to risk your heart on something that doesn't make sense on paper. Strong enough to choose love over fear over and over again." He lifted their joined hands to his lips and kissed her knuckles. I promise to be worthy of your kindness, your bravery, your strength. I promise to love you not just when it's easy, but especially when it's hard. I promise to choose you, every single day for the rest of my life." Pastor Rodriguez smiled at both of them. "Do you have rings?" "We do," Ethan said, pulling out 2 new wedding bands. "We thought we should have rings we chose together." "Zoe, place this ring on Ethan's finger and repeat after me. With this ring, I choose you." "With this ring, I choose you," Zoe said, sliding the gold band onto Ethan's finger. "Ethan, place this ring on Zoe's finger and repeat after me. With this ring, I choose you." "With this ring, I choose you," Ethan said, his hands shaking slightly as he placed the ring next to her grandmother's ring, which she had moved to her right hand. "By the power vested in me and witnessed by the love in this room, I now pronounce you husband and wife." Again. Pastor Rodriguez grinned. "Ethan, kiss your bride. For real this time." This kiss was different from every kiss that had come before. It was deeper, fuller, weighted with the promise they had just made to each other. When they broke apart, both were crying and laughing at the same time. "Ladies and gentlemen," Pastor Rodriguez announced to their audience of one, "I present to you Mr. and Mrs. Parker. For the second time, but the first time that really counts." Eleanor applauded enthusiastically. "That was beautiful, you two. Absolutely beautiful." As they signed the paperwork, again, Zoe marveled at how different this felt from their first ceremony. 3 months ago, she had been pretending to marry a stranger. Today she had married her best friend, her partner, her person. "So what now?" Ethan asked as they walked out of the chapel together. "Now we go home," Zoe said. "To our home as our actual selves, and we start the rest of our lives. No more pretending? No more pretending. No more backup plans. Just us, figuring it out as we go." That evening they had a small celebration dinner at their apartment with Eleanor, Zoe's parents, and a few close friends. It was simple. Takeout from their favorite restaurant, a grocery store cake, and champagne that Ethan had been saving for a special occasion. "A toast," Eleanor said, raising her glass, "to Zoe and Ethan, who taught an old woman that love comes in many forms. Sometimes it's planned and careful, and sometimes it's spontaneous and brave. But it's always worth celebrating. To taking chances," Linda added. "To choosing love over fear," Michael said. "To happy endings that are really happy beginnings," Ethan said, looking at Zoe. "To us," Zoe said simply, and they all drank. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and they had cleaned up the last of the celebration, Zoe and Ethan sat on their couch together, finally alone as a married couple who had chosen each other with full knowledge and complete honesty. "Any regrets?" Ethan asked. "Only one," Zoe said. "What's that?" "I regret that it took a wedding dress mix-up to bring us together. I wish I had found you sooner." "I don't," Ethan said. "If we had met sooner, we might not have been ready for each other. Maybe we needed to go through everything we did, the wrong relationships, the broken engagements, the near misses, to be the people who could recognize something real when we found it." "You think we were meant to find each other?" "I think we were meant to find each other exactly when we did, exactly how we did. Even the dress mix-up, even Amanda leaving, even sitting on those church steps feeling like our lives were falling apart. Maybe it was all leading us to each other." Zoe curled up against Ethan's side, feeling completely content for the first time in months. "What do you think happens next?" "I think we wake up tomorrow morning and have coffee together. I think we go to work and come home to each other. I think we have fights about whose turn it is to take out the trash and make up kisses in the kitchen. I think we travel together and buy furniture together and maybe someday have babies together." "That sounds perfect. It sounds normal. Wonderfully, beautifully normal. After everything we've been through, normal sounds like the greatest adventure of all." As they got ready for bed, their first night as a genuinely married couple, Zoe thought about how much her life had changed in 3 months. She had gone from planning a safe, predictable future with Christopher to building an uncertain but exciting life with Ethan. She had learned that sometimes the best things came from the worst disasters, that sometimes you had to lose your way to find where you truly belonged. "Good night, husband," she said as they settled into bed together. "Good night, wife. Sweet dreams." They already came true. 6 months later, Zoe and Ethan hosted a proper wedding reception for all their friends and family who had missed the original drama. They told their story, the whole story, during the speeches, and by the end there wasn't a dry eye in the house. "To Zoe and Ethan," Jessica said in her maid of honor speech, "who proved that sometimes the best love stories begin with the words, 'This is crazy, but.'" "To the bride who helped a stranger," Eleanor added, "and the groom who helped her find herself." 1 year later they renewed their vows again just for fun in the same chapel where they had married twice before. By then the story of how they met had become family legend, told and retold at every gathering. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if Amanda hadn't left? Zoe asked Ethan on their first anniversary. Never, Ethan said firmly. Because this is what was supposed to happen. You, me, us. Everything else was just practice for the real thing. Even the wedding dress mix-up? Especially the wedding dress mix-up. Best mistake that ever happened to me. 5 years later, when their daughter asked how mommy and daddy met, they told her the whole story, about the wrong dress and the right person, about helping a stranger and finding true love, about how sometimes the best things in life come from the most unexpected places. So you married daddy to make great-grandma Eleanor happy? Little Emma asked. I married daddy because it was the right thing to do, Zoe explained. But I stayed married to him because it was the best thing I ever did. And they lived happily ever after, Ethan added, kissing both his girls. Did they really? Emma asked. They really did, Zoe confirmed. But not because their life was perfect. Because they chose to be happy together, every single day. And they did live happily ever after, not because their love story was conventional, but because it was completely, perfectly theirs. They had learned that the best beginnings often come disguised as endings, that sometimes you have to say yes to the wrong thing to find the right thing, and that love isn't about finding someone who fits your plan, it's about finding someone who makes you want to write a completely new plan together. In the end, Zoe never did get her original wedding dress back. She didn't need it anymore. She had something better. A love story that was messy and complicated and absolutely true, with a husband who chose her every day and a life that was nothing like what she had planned and everything she had never dared to dream.